Oh, well, hello there, everyone. Today I have this big old mixer out because I'm gonna make blueberry pie with all those delicious blueberries that we got from that food truck the other day or last week. So I'm gonna get started on making the crust. That's the first most important part of the pie. Well, I suppose besides the filling, but to me the crust is the most delicious. So I will go through the recipe that I use. I got it off of allrecipes.com, and I will walk you through that process that I use to make the crust. You could also use store-bought crust if you want. There's no shame in that. Totally done that before. Pie crust is a lot of work, and it can be very unforgiving. I found that this recipe that I've been using is pretty forgiving. I like that it starts with room temperature ingredients and put it in the fridge. Sorry, add things. You put it in the fridge and then it cools, and it turns out very buttery and flaky. Or not buttery, but flaky. Anyway, I'm rambling, so give me a second to gather all my other ingredients and I will show you how I do this. Okay, the ingredients you will need is 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 3/4 cup shortening. This is vegetable shortening. I have substituted this with bacon grease before. You can use any lard, would work too. I've never tried it with butter. But yeah, any kind of animal fat I could do with this. Or yeah. 1/2 cup of water. 1 egg. I have it cracked in the bowl here. 2 teaspoons salt, and 3 tablespoons sugar. If I'm using like a savory recipe, like I said, I'll substitute the bacon grease. I keep it on hand for seasoning my cast iron. So I'll substitute some of this out for that. Just adds a nice little flavor. It's really good with an apple pie too. And then with the sugar too, if I'm going to be doing like a pot pie or something like that, I will only use like 1 tablespoon of sugar. Because it doesn't really need to be as sweet for that kind of a thing. So yeah, so first thing you do, you could totally do this by hand. Before I got this bad boy, I did this with a pastry cutter. So I mean, it's just like any pastry, like biscuits, things like that you would make. You add your shortening in here, and you could break it up a little bit too instead of just one big clump. But oh shoot, actually before you oh, okay, well, before you do that, we'll just rewind and pretend like I didn't do that. Before I add the shortening, I add my sugar and my salt, and I give that a good stir. Usually kind of stir it up, get it evenly incorporated in there before I add the shortening. But I did this backwards because I wasn't paying much attention, I guess. So but yeah, so then you do that, and then what I do is I use this paddle attachment. I hook it up there, and give it a good stir. I just have it on stir because I can see it's kind of goes everywhere. You don't need to go any faster than that. Just stir is fine. And what you want to do is you want to get all of that fat nice and crumbly in there. This is the good start to making a nice dough. All that shortening will melt in the oven with the pie and kind of give it that flaky texture. So that's what the purpose of that is. So you just mix this for a few minutes until you notice some just small crumbs. You can stop it every once in a while and give it a scrape the sides, just make sure that it's getting incorporated in there really good, and all that. I'm just going to scrape the sides and the bottom quick. Give it a little 30 seconds or so. Let's see, I'll bring you in for a close-up too so you can kind of see what it looks like here in just a second. Okay, so as you can see, it's got like a nice small crumble, and when you press it together, it sticks. So that's what you want. You want it to kind of be like that. So, and then next we will add the other ingredients. Okay, next what I do is I add the water to the egg. Carefully there so I don't spill it. And I take a fork and I whisk it together pretty good. Now my egg is room temperature. I think before we got chickens, I did this with just an egg out of the fridge and it was just fine. So that's not a problem. And then you just add that here to the dough. It's already forming there. Oops. And then you just want to give that a good stir until it all comes together. So, not a lot. Maybe 45 seconds to a minute. You really don't want to overwork this. Although this recipe, I will say, is way more forgiving than what a traditional pie crust would be. So you can see this is all kind of coming together. So I'm just going to scrape this off the paddle here. Get as much of it off here as you can because you don't want any of this stuff to go to waste. Although I will say this makes plenty of dough. I usually have a little bit left over from each batch. So, and then this blueberry pie, the recipe I found doesn't call for a top crust, but I am definitely gonna do something for the top because that's the way I've always had blueberry pie. That's the way I like it. So I'm gonna do it that way. But anyway, so once you get that off of there, you remove this to get it out of your way. And then, let's see. And then what I do is I lightly flour the counter. So I'll move this out of the way here. Just a second. Unplug it so I don't have a situation on my hands. Okay. Yeah, you grab some flour here. Oh, geez, that's probably too much. Just a tiny amount here. Just to keep it from sticking to the counter. And what I do is I just take it out of here. Boy, this is so awkward today. One of those days, I guess. Just get it all out of there. Pick the sides and this and that. Alright. And then you just kind of work it. You want to try and just form it together in a nice, neat package here. Like I said, I just put way too much flour down here, I'm sure. Just to keep it from sticking to the counter, you don't need much. I just kind of work it a little bit, make sure it's all together. And I'm not the best at pie crust. It's not really one of my strengths, as you'll probably see later when I try and roll this bad boy out. But like I said, this is probably the most forgiving pie crust recipe I've ever made, and my husband really likes it. He said he prefers this to the other ones he's had, so I must be doing something right if he likes it. So, so you want to kind of form a little circle, and if you have saran wrap, you can use that. I don't, so I'm trying to not use that anymore. So what I do is I put this back in my bowl here, and I have this awesome silicone lid. Makes a nice tight seal. You can pick it up, see, it's nice and tight. And yeah, so once that is, then I put that in the fridge for at least half an hour, at least an hour, I would say, to make sure it's nice and chilled. And yeah, and in the meantime, I will clean up this area and I will get going on the filling. Okay, so for the filling, you will need 5 cups of blueberries divided. So there's 3 cups in that bowl, 2 cups in this bowl, and it'll make sense as we go through, but very important to split these up. And then 3/4 cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, and an 1/8 teaspoon of salt. I just put the salt in there. 1 tablespoon of butter, tablespoon of lemon juice, and a 1/4 cup of cold water. And then you'll also need a medium saucepan. And let me get my camera set up and we will get started. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see this okay. Still figuring this camera angle thing out. Let me see here. Oh, I got a whisk here. Alright, so what you want to do first is you want to combine the sugar, cornstarch, salt, and water. And you're going to whisk that until smooth. So what I'm going to do first is put the sugar and the cornstarch in there, and the salt, and kind of mix that all together so it kind of mixes in okay there. Ooh, cornstarch is powdery, be careful. I don't know if you see that. It does fly out there. And then you want to mix in that 1/4 cup of cold water until smooth. Just whisk it in there good. Just make sure everything's good and incorporated together. I'll try and see if I can get a closer view for you guys. It's kind of hard to see. Sorry it's so dark in here. It's like rainy and it's getting late, and yeah, I should have done this earlier, but technical difficulties, but we're making it through. So, geez, I know I'm yelling at the microphone. Alright, anyway, you can tell that's all smooth. And you're going to put that on medium heat. The right burner here. And then you're going to add the 3 cups of the blueberries. And you're going to give that a little stir. I'm going to switch to a spoon. So I don't want to smash them just yet. Let's see, where's my... let's use a spatula because it's going to work just as good. So what you're going to want to do is heat this up and bring this to a boil, and then once it's boiling you want to stir it for 2 minutes or until thickened. So we'll come back when it's kind of getting close to that point. So I won't make you watch this whole process, that would be just rude. So stay tuned. Okay, now that it's boiled, I'll try and get a close-up here. You can see it's pretty thick. You know, kind of like, you know, what a pie filling would be coming out of the jar. And then once it's to this point, you add the butter and the lemon juice. And then you mix it until the butter is melted, and the berries. So the berries, the lemon juice, and the butter. And you stir that up until the butter is melted. So I'm going to add all that in here. Bloop. Oh, I'm so excited for this, guys. Fun fact, blueberries are my favorite fruit. Or whatever they are. Berries, my favorite thing, really. I love blueberries. I've been known to overdo it. So, not on pie necessarily, but just blueberries in general. I mean, I love them just plain. I love them with yogurt. I love them with cream. My roommate, when I lived in Seattle, her favorite like late night snack was frozen blueberries and milk. And you guys need to give that a try because it is so good. If you like blueberries, you know, I suggest you give it a try. It's a nice little healthy snack. So, and not the kind that's like packed in syrup, just straight up frozen blueberries, plain, no frills or whatever. Okay, so I got this mixed in, and then you want to let it cool before you pour it in your pie crust. So I'm going to get started on preheating the oven. Follow the directions on your pie crust. Mine is 425. I think that's pretty standard for most pie crusts. If that's different from what I remember, then I will leave it in a little text below. But I'm going to bring you in here for a close-up and show you a better look at what this looks like here. So, so as you can see, this is nice and thick and awesome. So, and there's no added food coloring or anything. This is just from the blueberries. They naturally have this beautiful color. So, yeah, so then now you gotta let this cool until, and while it cools, we can get the pie crust going and ready and all that. So, okay, hopefully you can see this okay. Like I said, apologies for the bad lighting. It's getting late. So here I have this pie crust, and I divided it in half. What we made, what the recipe I used, and that I linked in the description below, makes enough for 2 pie crusts and a little bit. You know, and it depends on how thick or thin you want to roll it out to. I generally roll this out pretty thick. Just, I don't know, it just seems to be like the better way to do it. So you want to just lightly flour the surface of your counter or board or whatever you're using. And a rolling pin. Now, if you don't have a rolling pin, don't panic. Not the end of the world. Any kind of bottle will work. Like if you have a wine bottle or something like that, or even like a jar. Just anything that's like round or cylindrical will do the job. So just roll it out. And I roll mine out 2.5 and 1/4 inch thick. Like I said, you can do as thick or as thin as you want. This crust just tends to make a thicker crust, at least in my experience. Like I said, I'm not very good at it. Pie crusts are like the one thing that I think I suck at. So, you probably should watch other videos on the best pie crusts and all this and that and whatever. But I don't know. For me, this turns out really delicious. I love it. So yeah. So I'm trying to roll this out as evenly as I can. My counter's not that even probably either. So you just work with what you got. That's part of the fun of this whole adventure. So, whoop, see, I'm making a mess already. So, if it rips like that, don't panic. You know, you can keep like a little container of water nearby and use the water and kind of push the seams together if you need to. But you just want to roll that out to the desired thickness, and we'll be back. Okay, so in addition to making it thin, you also want to make sure that it's going to fit your pie plate. So what I have here is a 9-inch deep dish. So you how I kind of gauge mine is it's like a couple inches wider than my pie plate, if that makes sense. And then the best way that I've found and learned to get this bad boy on here, which can be like one of the most intimidating parts, so there's no shame in buying a pre-made crust. Honestly, I wouldn't even be mad. But But one of the easiest ways that I found is to take your rolling pin and one of these bench scrapers. If you don't have one of these, a spatula will work, like something like you would flip pancakes with or whatever. Something like this. That works too. I've totally used that in the past. And so what you want to do is just kind of lift the edges of it. Just start on one side. This is going to be delicate and it might rip on you. Just be patient, go slow. It'll be okay. You can always fix the rips, trust me. So, let's see here. You just kind of roll it up. What I like to do is just put my plate right there and lift this baby up and drape it over and roll it slow and steady. Here we go. Took me a long time to practice that, so don't panic if it doesn't go well the first time or 12, because honestly I got some stories. But anyway, so what you want to do is kind of gently, lift the sides, tuck it down in here, make sure there's no air gap between, your crust and your plate there. And I've never tried it, but I bet if you don't have a pie plate, but you have like a deep dish round cake pan, you could probably try doing that. I'll give that a try sometime and we'll see. I'll tell you how it goes. Because for me, I'm all about, this is going to age me too, but I'm all about being a MacGyver in the kitchen. Because, sometimes you don't have the tools you need. Maybe you live in the middle of nowhere and you can't really get to a city that's big enough to have these tools. So you improvise. You make it work. You figure it out. And that's what I'm doing here. So, alright. So you kind of fold over the edges here a little bit here and there. Kind of make sure there's no major cracks or creases. Everything looks pretty good. This is actually one of the better ones I've done. So, hooray! We're looking good. I'm getting better. Okay. And then, you want to wait for your stuff to cool. Seems like it's cooled pretty good, actually. But my oven's still preheating, so I'm going to give it a minute. In the meantime, you could keep this in the fridge to keep it cool. Okay, so I put the filling in. Now, the recipe called for no crust, but I was like a little bit of crust on mine. I guess I've never tried a no crust, but so I was going to try it without, but then I remembered I have these awesome bat cookie cutters that I bought to make my nephew's birthday cake a few years ago that I never actually got to use. And I thought, well, it's practically Halloween. I mean, every day is Halloween when you're a Gothic farmer. So I decided to cut out a bunch of different sizes and put them on top like this. So, get creative with your crust. I'm also going to take some of the leftover crust and bake these up just to have, because that sounds delicious. So, but anyways, back to the task at hand. What you want to do is go around the edge with just a little butter knife. It doesn't have to be a sharp one. Just follow the shape of your pie plate. And just turn off the excess crust there. Just clean up the edges here. Okay. And then what I like to do too is just kind of make sure it's good on the edges. Follow the kind of ridges here. If yours is just a plain one, you could fancy it up with a fork or, however you want to do it. This already has the fancy scallop, I think they call it. So, yeah. Alright, so that's beautiful, awesome, ready to go in the oven. So it's at 425 degrees, and what I'm also going to do is put it on a cookie sheet just in case it bubbles over. It's always good to safety first. So I have one here. So I'm going to put it on there. Put it in the oven. I'm going to start with 20 minutes, see how it's doing, and then I'll probably lower the temperature to 350 because you don't want it to burn. You can wrap tinfoil around here, around the, sorry you can't see, around the edge of the crust. They also make these special tools where you just put it over the top and it keeps it from burning, but I don't have that fancy tool, so but what I'm going to do is put it in for 425 for 20 minutes, lower the heat to 350, and probably give it another 40 minutes after that, but I'll check back and give you an exact time. Okay, so this was in there for 20 minutes. As you can see, it's starting to get pretty brown around the edges, but the middle needs to brown up a little bit. So I'm going to turn it down to, oh, sorry, I hope you can hear me. So I'm going to turn it down to 350 and put it in for another 20 minutes and check it then. It's been another 20 minutes and boo, burning. I'm probably going to give this another 10 minutes. It's kind of starting to bubble a little bit, but I want to make sure this is cooked through and brown and stuff. Yeah, I don't have tin foil, so this is not going to look like the most perfect pie ever, but that's alright. I have no doubt that it is going to be very delicious, so we'll be back when it is completely done. Okay, as you can see, well, hopefully you can tell, it's kind of, like I said, the lighting is bad, so I really apologize. But I'll try and get a little closer. You can kind of see it's a nice golden brown, except the crust. Ignore the crust. But the bats look nice, and it's nice and bubbly. So I will call that done. So I also dropped the temperature back down to 300. Everybody's oven is different, but I would start with 425. For 15 to 20 minutes, drop it down to 350 for another 20 minutes, and check it out. And like I said, definitely do the tin foil or get one of those covers that you put over the edges of the crust to help keep it from burning. That's what I usually do. I don't have tin foil this time, and this is what happens. So as you can see, not everything's perfect, so this is real life, real pie. And it is going to be so hard to wait for this thing to cool off because I want to eat it right now. But definitely let the pie cool to at least room temperature before you cut into it. Otherwise, you're going to have a literal hot mess on your hands. So I hope you give this a try soon. And let me know in the comments below if you have any tips for making delicious pie or crust or anything like that. All right, hope you guys have a great day. Please like, or even if you want to put a dislike. I guess if you don't like blueberry pie, I understand. It's not for everybody. Please subscribe to my channel. I try and do recipes at least once a week. And if you like chickens or animal shenanigans, we have a lot of that here. And if you really like this and you want to share it, that would be awesome too. And I hope you all have a great day. And yeah, take care, you guys. Bye.